Yes boys, what's going on guys? Welcome back to the channel. I've tweaked my lightning build slightly. I've added a new weapon in the lance. It's still got blink bolt on, but it hits for a lot more damage, and I do think it's actually improved the build, and that's saying something because it was already really strong. I've still got blink bolt on the lance, really effective stuff, and I've got some talismans to enhance the damage of the lance. Here are all the stats and the equipment. As you can see, I'm using the lacerated cross tree, and I'm also using the two-handed sword talisman, so this is going to improve that damage output when I'm using the blink bolt on the lance and getting that follow-up attack. That's my flask, they're the stats on the right. Let's get into these invasions. I've got some awesome ones to show you, so let's go boys, let's get it on. Let's get jiggy with it, let's have it. Living it large, ball selector, here we go. So there's no doubt about it guys, this build has been performing really well, and you may remember from the last video that I've actually been using the Milady light greatsword as well as the swift spear in my left hand weapon slot, and I've been making use of those consecutive attacks. But I was brainstorming things a little bit with this build, and I was thinking what else could I do to tweak it and maybe change up the playstyle slightly but keep the same identity as it's always had from the start. And I was thinking about different weapons, what I could use, and the first thing that came to mind to tweak things a little bit was to actually use a shield on this build and use it as a bit of a guarding shield and get those nice poke attacks from behind the shield. And I was going to keep blink bolt on my right hand weapon and have no skill on the shield on the left. I thought about using the lance, I thought about using some heavy greatswords. I thought I'd just try a little bit of a different playstyle but keep the blink bolt. So I got the lance on the build, I started using the lance, and then I put a shield on the left hand side. But shielding at this level, I just don't think it's possible unless you're either using shield grease or if you're using a great shield. It's just so hard to shield for any length of time without getting guard broken. It just felt like it weren't worth it, it was too risky, and it was jeopardising the identity of the build too much. It weren't the playstyle that I ended up liking at all. So I ditched that idea and I just ended up sticking with the lance. As I mentioned, I was kind of looking for a weapon to use blink bolt with that would keep the same identity on the build but would bring something different to the Milady greatsword that I had been using. So I thought the lance would be a really good choice because it's a very different kind of playstyle to the Milady, but it's also got some good length on it. So I thought after using that blink bolt I'll have a better chance of hitting that follow-up attack after I've used the blink bolt, and it actually ended up working really well. So then, having swapped to the lance, I obviously realised that I didn't need the consecutive attack talismans. I didn't need the talisman, the flask option to buff my consecutive attacks. So I knew I could change things up a little bit in that regard to get some more damage out of the lance. Now I did initially try using the retaliatory cross tree talisman, and that talisman enhances your attacks after you've executed a roll or a backstep. I weren't sure initially if the blink bolt counted as a roll, so I tried that talisman. A good friend of mine actually helped me out with some testing just to see if the damage was affected at all, and I realised that it weren't affected whatsoever, so I didn't put that one on. I also actually tried the lacerated cross tree talisman, the one that I'm actually using on the build now, but I thought I'd try that in pairing it with the blink bolt. I didn't know if the blink bolt would count as a dash attack, but that also didn't work. But I realised that that was a good talisman to have on the build because I will be doing a lot of running attacks after I've done that initial blink bolt. So I knew that I'd get some good extra damage out of the running light attacks or the running heavy attacks, as you can just see in this invasion now. It's a lance, so I will be doing a lot of charged running attacks with it. So I thought I'd keep the lacerating cross tree talisman on the build because although it didn't work with blink bolt, it works for every other attack pretty much that I'll be doing on this build when I'm not using the blink bolt attack technique. So that was the first talisman that I added to things to get a little bit more damage out of the lance. Next up, I was thinking what else I could do, and the obvious one was the two-handed talisman. I know I've got the 2 gravelstone seals on this build, but when I'm using the lance, I'm often two-handing it when switching around between the lance and the talismans. So I thought it just made sense to try out that new talisman and the two-handed talisman, and that's also doing some nice extra damage when I'm getting those attacks on the lance, and it actually has all worked out really, really well. I then started thinking about the Flask of Wondrous Physic. I had the Thorny Crack tier in that, which buffs consecutive attacks. I obviously didn't need that in the Flask anymore, so I decided to go with the good old-fashioned Opaline Hard tier. Tried and tested Flask option, which I always use, so I just went for that for a bit more damage negation and give us a bit more tankiness in these fights. It's all worked out really well. I'm getting some good damage on the spear. The extra length of the spear makes it really good for roll catching and stuff. You'll see throughout numerous invasions in this video how useful the lance is in conjunction with the blink bolt. Milady was obviously awesome. The swift spear was awesome in the left hand weapon slot. Buffing those consecutive attacks was really good. It was a really fun playstyle. But this is just a different playstyle, but it's keeping the same identity. I will use this build again with Milady. I'm not saying I've ditched Milady off this build. It's obviously still a part of this build, but the lance and the Milady are just 2 main weapons that I can switch between to switch up the playstyle of the build whilst keeping the same identity as I've already mentioned. So it's just a really nice extra combat option for this build. In the last video for this build as well, guys, I mentioned that I was looking for a name for this build. I hadn't yet named it, and I asked you boys to give me some suggestions with some names for the build. I wanted to take into account the fashion as well as the playstyle. Oh, bearing in mind with this build, I've actually changed the fashion up from last time I used it. I've put some different armour on. I've kept the same helmet, but I'm actually using one of the different armour pieces. I can't remember exactly what it is. Give me 1 second. I've got my Xbox open here. The Black Knight armour set. It's the Black Knight armour set. I thought it went really well with this helmet. I put some different greaves and leggings on. I've put the Lionel's gauntlets and the greaves on. Lionel's gauntlets and the greaves, sorry, not Lionel's, it's Lionel's. But they're just giving me a bit more poise, a bit more defences. And I really like this fashion choice. I loved the fashion that I had previously, but I think this one makes it look a little bit more badass and a bit more like a Roman soldier that I was going for. I just like it, guys. Let me know, do you like this one more than the fashion in the last video? I think I like it better. Either way, we're looking pretty good. But I was asking you guys to provide me with a name for this build, and if you give me anything that I really liked, I decided that I'd name it. And we have chose one, but before I mention the actual name, just a few special shout outs. Nico said the Sparkton. I thought that one was pretty good. Electorian Guard, well, that was pretty sweet as well. Oaths 420 said maybe Dragon Cult Paladin, pretty good option there. One of my favourite shout outs here was the Blinking Barry. Blinking Barry by who's that? Mega Het Butler, is it? Mega Het Butler says Blinking Barry or the Shocker. Some good options, guys, but the one I've actually gone with, as you could probably tell from the thumbnail, was suggested by Lord Gamabunta, and it's called the Lightning Legionnaire, and I think it fits this build absolutely perfectly. It fits that Roman aesthetic that I've gone for, the Roman warrior, but it's fitting with the lightning theme. And initially he actually said that it's a historical reference, the name of the 12th Roman legion, the Legio Fulminata, and that actually means the 12th legion armed with lightning, or the Legion Thunderbolt. And I just thought it all fit this build absolutely perfectly. From a lore perspective, I just think it looks great. I was actually toying with just calling it Legio Fulminata. I thought that was cool. Obviously from the Legio Fulminata meaning 12th Legion. So I was going to call it the Legio Fulminata, but I thought the Lightning Legionnaire just kind of makes it a bit more obvious. I thought not everyone might understand what a Legio Fulminata even is or means. So although like I would have known, and if you know your history, if you know your Roman armies and all that, you'd probably know yourselves, but I thought the Lightning Legionnaire, it comes from the same thing as the Legio Fulminata, but it's a little bit more obvious. So yeah, we've gone with the Lightning Legionnaire. So thanks everyone for your suggestions, but yeah, that is what I dubbed this build, the Lightning Legionnaire. Absolutely love it. This invasion that's happening now in the background was a really good one. I managed to kill the summon early on in the invasion, and I was having a nice little duel with the horse there, but he managed to get his friend back in. The summon is using like a pretty decent rot setup, Scarlet Rot. He's using that new pole blade. He's got the Rot Dragon Breath. He's also using the butterfly spells, all to build up some good Scarlet Rot. So he's got a pretty cool build. This was a really fun one, you know. It was a really fun one. I was disappointed I couldn't kill the horse in time before his summon turned up. They've got me really low, and then the summon finishes me off there with a lightning bolt of his own. Really cool build. I get a point down of my own there, which I don't mind at all. I had a couple of comments on my last video, people saying that I weren't being very sporting or whatever, or I was being a bit of a douchebag pointing down at people in the last video. It's all in good fun, guys. Flipping heck. I never mind if I get pointed down, and it happens numerous times. I'm not saying that I lose majority of my invasions and get pointed down. I promise. I've just give that away, Anna. I lose pretty much all of my invasions, guys, and I just get pointed down at all day. It makes me really sad. Why do people point down? Why are people so mean and angry? But yeah, I don't care, guys. It's all in good fun. I'm not a toxic player, so if I point down at you an invasion, it's either because you've been wearing the white mask, and let me tell you guys, every single white mask I invade is going to get pointed down at, or if someone's spamming a spell at me and I kill them, I'm going to point down at them. Maybe I was just in a little bit of a cheeky mood, but it's just all in good fun, innit? It doesn't really matter. It's only an emote in a video game. So if I get pointed down at, I do not care. But I've had a couple of comments in the last video saying that maybe I was a bit out of line pointing down at people. But it's all in good fun, guys. I don't mean anything by it. It's all just fun and games. We're all having a good time. And yeah, let's just all be friends, shall we? Peace and love, baby. That's what it's all about. Peace and love. I mean, look at this host here. He just got absolutely nuked with the Ancient Dragon's Lightning Spear. Lightning Strike. The Ancient Dragon's Lightning Strike. It actually worked for me, guys. It worked for me. I've had some decent use out of it lately. In the last video I was proper complaining that it's proper inconsistent. And don't get me wrong, it is proper inconsistent. There's no two ways about it. But in this video, I've had some good use out of it. It's actually been being rather kind to me. I've had some good kills and I've done some really good damage, and I've actually landed it on a few players, so I can't complain, guys. I can't complain one bit. It's just been lovely lately. It's been flipping lovely. Look at these two here. This guy's using the big fire-breathing shield, and he's got that Mesmer Spear. Now, I do quite like this spear, you know. I've not tried it myself, but I think it's pretty cool. I think the Ash of War in it is just a little bit ridiculous, though. It just doesn't need to be as big as it is. Do you know what I mean? It's just so extravagant. It's just a little bit silly. And when you get people in a gank and you've got someone just spamming at you, it can be a little bit annoying. But I think if they just made that weapon, toned down the Ash of War a little bit. I even quite like the heavy attacks where you can throw the spear and it explodes. I think that's a really cool feature. I just don't think it needs that and an Ash of War that lasts 10 minutes long and does 1,000,000 damage and does, like, you know, massive explosions and brings spears up out of the ground. I think it's a cool weapon. I just think it's a little bit much, innit? It's a little bit much. But getting some great use out of the Blink Bolt Ash of War in this video, as you can see against this host. It's just an awesome Ash of War, and I think it works really, really well on the Lance. I did actually try another weapon on this build with the Blink Bolt. Let me just double check what it's called. It's the Heavy Thrusting Sword, the new one. What's it called? It's the Sword Lance. That's it. It's a Sword Lance. I thought that would be a good option as well because that is quite long range. But I tried the sword lance on this build with blink bolt, and I don't know why. I can't really sum up why, but I just kind of don't get on with that weapon. I've never really used heavy thrusting swords in general too much, but the sword lance has its own kind of unique moveset. It's a kind of like a mix between a heavy thrusting sword and a great spear, and I just kind of didn't get on with it. I didn't like it on the build. I never just had too much success with it. I always found myself going back to the lance, so I kind of just decided to ditch the sword lance and stick with the standard lance like I've been using throughout this video. The horse in this invasion has been using those backhanded blades. Bit of an oppressive weapon, they're very annoying to fight against, but he's also using the blind spot Ash of War, which can also be very annoying. I think it did get a bit of a nerf, didn't it, in the last patch, but it's still, like I said, very annoying to fight against. But I was actually finding in this invasion that the blink bolt on the lance seems to be quite a good counter to it. If you watch this fight between me and the host, I'm kind of using my blink bolt in reaction to him blind spotting, and because of the length of the lance, it's allowing me to get some good shots on him. When he, like you could see there, he uses the blind spot as I use the blink bolt. The length on the lance allows me to get some good shots on him, and it puts him straight on the back foot. It just works out really well. This was a good invasion, and I actually realised how good blink bolt is on the lance as a counter to someone spamming blind spot like this. Really cool invasion. I was proper happy with this one. I think moving forward with this build now, I can definitely say that it's finished. I would say that this is a finished product of the build. I was going to add the new lightning spell that was released with the DLC. Is it the Death's Lightning Spear? You know, the one where you throw an initial lightning strike and then you get the follow-up lightning strikes as well. I was going to add that to this build, but I've decided that I'm going to save that particular spell for one of my other builds. I do have a couple of other lightning themed builds, so I'm going to save that one to add to one of those. I'm really happy with this build as it is now. I'm really happy with the selection of weapons. We've got the lance, we've got the milady, and we've got the swift spear. And as I mentioned earlier, it's only a case of switching around a few talismans, and I've got two really nice playstyles to switch between for this build. So I'm happy with it. I'm not going to change it moving forward. I don't know if I'm going to do any more videos with it for now, or maybe go to a different build, or maybe go back to one of the original builds that I've done the DLC with. Who knows, we'll see. But I'm really happy with how this one's gone, and I think it's turned out really, really well. This is the last invasion of the video, guys. I've invaded this fight club, and as you all know, I am not going to partake in your silly little fight clubs. I'm going to get in there, I'm going to nuke one of you, and then I'm just going to do some blink bolts, and I'm going to jab you, and I'm going to poke you, and eventually I'm going to kill you. And it's as simple as that, guys. But thanks for watching, thanks for being here. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Look after yourselves, guys, look after each other. Keep your eyes open for the next video that's coming up on the channel. I'm not sure what it's going to be just yet, but I'll probably start some invasions tomorrow and see what's happening. Take it easy, boys, and I'll see you next time.